Well, hello, creatives, community, kind folks out there. Welcome to the channel. It's RPG with DBJ. I'm your host, DBJ. And what are we doing today? Well, if you didn't know, we take a subject. This time it's going to be cultures and traditions and all that good stuff. We take that, we stretch it out through the week, an hour each day, 5 hours of content, and we subdivide it each day. Monster Monday, a Discord Tuesday, and today, of course, is Hump Day. It is World Building Wednesday, and we are going to take some examples of adding in for your tabletop RPG content, how to add in some cultures and customs, traditions, and those kind of things, add them into your game, and have some fun with it. Now, today, World Building Wednesday kind of has a format. And so what we want to really do is we're going to take a little small thing, a little small thread, and knit ourselves a bigger world. And in that world, we're going to find out, we're going to kind of openly discuss what do the players do? What are their actions? What are the things that they will engage with? Give them props to poke and prod and such. We're going to give them some adversaries. How do we include some really cool adversaries, NPCs, monsters, creatures, that kind of thing. Combat, basically. Okay, that's one of the pillars. We're going to do the social pillar, especially with customs and traditions and that kind of thing. Yeah, there's going to be lots of social interaction, but we're going to kind of break down what kind of social interactions there will be. And of course, I'm your self-appointed third pillar-ist of exploration in the RPG community. So we're going to talk about some of the locations, some dynamic locations they will be in, whether it's the natural environment, jungles, mountains, deserts, open seas, things like that, aerial, other planes of existence or something, or whether there are urban areas, built up locations, docks, sewers, towers, mine shafts, all that kind of stuff. And we may even talk about, as a little aside, we may talk about different types of ways to modify what the players can do. Maybe we change the way magic works, or psionics or something, or if you're using classic Dungeons and Dragons, whether there are class features and that kind of thing. So that's kind of where we're going to start out at. Now, I will have you know that we have a rather new individual, although new is subjective. And of course, we do have a mascot. I haven't quite picked the mascot that I wanted. I thought I did. We have a mascot that's a little squirrel. If you didn't know, there's an excellent movie called Up. It's animated, and there is a dog in the movie who has who has a collar, and the dog gets quite distracted by the squirrel. So on this show, there's a little aside here that we always, when we start talking about other things that are way off subject, we're just like, squirrel. So that's where that comes from. All right, so something that came up yesterday, we have to start somewhere. And we're going to modify a little bit of Mr. Spenza's idea of these nation states that are devoted to collecting knowledge. Now, we're going to modify that a little bit, because I kind of get the impression, kind of sort of, that this is something that Mr. Spenza, the czar of spending knowledge, feels like it's a little bit personal. So we're going to stretch that a little bit offside. It's going to be a little bit one-off of his creation, and go from there. So since we're talking about cultures, traditions, customs, in essence, and of course, if you tune in for Monday and Tuesday as well, it's basically things that take place, narrative things that happen in your world, whether it's the way people speak or talk, greet each other, however they eat, the clothing that they wear, the types of behaviors, some of the things, whether they are wives' tales, like mysteries and myths and legends that they believe in, or lots of different types of social interactions concerning status, whether they love you or hate you because of the things you say or the things you do and the respect you're given or denied. uh, well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Go ham. Go yeah, hard as a mother. Exactly. Yeah, world building is good world building. Yeah, all world building is good world building. All right, so we're going to start off with a bunch of nation states that are based around collecting knowledge, and that knowledge is part of the economy. And in other words, for example, there may be a nation state devoted to hunting, and maybe hunting some of the most dangerous beasts, as well as maybe the side note of that might be hunting down criminals or political dissidents, and that kind of thing. There may be a nation state devoted to mastering the blade and the warrior arts. In melee combat, there may be a nation state devoted to studying magic. And then, of course, you subdivide that down like necromancy and pyromancy and divination and that kind of thing. So summoning, whatever the case may be. Now, I gather that because we're talking about customs and cultures, that of course, within those nation states, they will have rankings amongst themselves, whether it's visual, they're wearing chains, or they are wearing specific types of robes or medallions or rings or something of that nature. They could have a complex set of long hair and braids, much like it's kind of thought of that dwarves would have the same thing, or a Viking culture where the way someone's hair is braided denotes some of their successes in life, a la Daenerys Stormborn and all this kind of stuff, So I'm sure there would be, if two swordsmen walking down the road, one comes from a nation state that masters the blade, unless the individual is specifically trying to hide where they've come from, and that might, since we're considering this to be in this world, they're not going to hide it. They're pretty proud of where they come from, that you'll know instantly, either because of the deep, rich blue of their accoutrements that they wear, robes and sashes or things. Maybe there might even be masks and such that some of the nation states, like, they may not have the same thing. It might not be, every nation state wouldn't wear a ring, but there may be certain specified types of things that you see from them. So, for example, one culture might have very elaborate henna tattoos or braids or piercings on the skin, and they may go primarily clothing-less, or maybe there's a shoulder that is usually exposed off of the things that they wear, and they start to grow a tattoo sleeve up their arm based on their successes in life, whether they are a sage that's, I don't know, studied the biological life of mythological creatures, all the way to the best martial artist or something like that. Okay. But masks are a great idea, as well as jewelry and patterns in clothing, whether they're denoted by animals, plants, flowers, or something along the lines of like Celtic knots, where they're complex patterns done by experts in the field. And of course, you can have a nation state that actually produces some of these materials that are given to the other nation states to denote their rankings. So it would be pretty cool to just have one nation state devoted to nothing but establishing the rankings of the other nation states, which would be actually kind of a cool thing to do. So, okay, so what do the players do? What we need something for the player characters to interact with. And I love the idea of cultures that are addicted to gaining knowledge. And this may have come from, maybe there's a little bit of history in this world where lack of knowledge is what brought down society, whether it's from having it being irresponsible about having wars and conflicts that have gone on far too many generations and far too long simply by lack of knowledge. Maybe there's some external force, something from another world. It could be a natural environmental hazard that has brought society to the brink of extinction. And if it wasn't for knowledge, if it wasn't for the people that sat back and gathered the information they needed, much like humanity has survived our ability to repel our paralysis from the things that paralyze us. Dead Man, the Storyteller, says wampum, a Native American form of currency made of tied string. Yes, isn't there also a Native indigenous peoples in the States thing of having a sacred bundle, a pouch, and within it are bits and pieces that tell the story of your journey in life? That could be a thing. Maybe specified items gathered along someone's journey that are encased in liquefied glass that cools, and it's held inside of it for forever, basically inside of the glass that's melted and draped over top of it, like pieces of stone or bone, metal, and something that of course can survive the heat of glass, or it could be some other kind of metal, maybe, that are braided onto a string. The tied string, well, a dream catcher itself, if you take a look at Dead Man puts into the Discord chat. By the way, for those who don't know, I have to say this each time, that Fantasy Grounds College has its own Discord, specifically Fantasy Grounds College, not Fantasy Grounds, but the Fantasy Grounds College is a free resource if you want to learn about using the virtual tabletop Fantasy Grounds. And of course, you have all of the classmates and collegiates hanging around to the left at the top, and of course you can learn from them. But those of us, the cool kids, we like to hang down in the boiler room. So if you slide all the way down on the left, that's where the cool kids hang out, and I happen to be there with them. All right, so however you want to establish status in this world, and the status from different city states. Yeah, Crampy, the cool kid style. Yeah, hanging down in the boiler room. All of us smoking our tabletop RPG ephemeral weed down there hanging out. But anyway, it's squirreling myself. Yep. The idea would be that the player characters are gathered to gain some kind of knowledge because of maybe there are other hazards in this world, and that in itself may be the rewards in this world. So instead of magic items and slaying your enemies, it might be gaining not just knowledge, but gaining or finding things that allow them to navigate in the world. For example, it may require the PCs finding a specific type of flower because the nectar is important in the creation of alchemy. It may be important in finding a specific book because the city-state devoted to the city-state devoted to collecting knowledge of the past would give them something else. So it may be the buying, trading, selling, the bartering of knowledge from one city-state to another to achieve a cool thing. So the player character that wants their sword enchanted or something can't get that unless they deal with the Druidic city-state, which then, of course, they produce herbal remedies, and those herbal remedies are needed to be given to the warrior city-state because they need that to help heal and cure their warriors that are going out there as bands of mercenaries, and you need them to help you protect protect the party as they travel through a dangerous region, because there is a like barbarian styled city state that lives on the border of the most dangerous region. And though they live at the most dangerous region, but they don't produce weapons that are made by the smiths in their city state. And so those weapons need to be taken, protected by the mercenaries who need the healing from the druidic place. And all this might only be possible for the PCs to tie this like strange loop together. And mind you, I'm just talking off the top of my head, but the PCs might be a combination of merchants, emissaries, envoys, as well as maybe some kind of thieves in the night. Because if you're going to have people devoted to knowledge, they're going to be people who want to keep that knowledge away from other people, right? Hey, we are the alchemists of the world, the doctors or something. We are the physicians. And if that knowledge got out to other people, our value would decrease. And although our city state might be the best, the ones who don't have that knowledge are like, we don't want to deal with you anymore. We want it for ourselves. So holding on to that knowledge and destroying it and keeping it from escaping is one kind of espionage kind of thing, as well as, of course, stealing that knowledge. And so there may be combinations of diplomacy, engaging in somewhat complex social rituals, the drinking of tea, the gathering together, the removing of weapons and clothing to take a steam bath with your enemy as you discuss the day's the day's goings on. Whereas there might be some espionage things where there's subtle threats, bribery, blackmail, lots of climbing walls, hiding in shadows, breaking into locked chambers, copying down of information, the use of blackmail to pry loose information from people who want to achieve status in their own city state by selling their information to others. Plur says, like being a lawyer or an accountant, hide all that juicy knowledge. The drinking of tea I approve of. Yes, I know I am I know I am your lesser in the tea drinking here in the States, but I love myself. I love to brutalize my tea with some lemonade. So there. But no, but in all seriousness, there may be a common thread. You hear what I said there, dead man? Kind of referring back to your tied string comment about Native Americans using wampum. But there may be a common thread amongst all of the city states in terms of how they relate to each other and deal and trade with this knowledge. And it could be the consumption of a drink, but the consumption of that drink might involve different things. Like one might be very social. Like, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to sit down at the table and go through like kind of a simple tea ceremony where everyone gets a drink of tea and we're going to sit and just talk at the table. There may be others that sit at the base of a massive waterfall, and you're going to sit there in a loincloth and simple clothing as the frigid waters of the waterfall pour down upon you as you attempt to drink your tea, and you're going to sit there and meditate for 45 minutes before we have a talk, right? Or anything thereof. You know, it could be scrambling to the top of a mountain pass or going out into the deep desert without any water, and the only place to get that water might be to walk there with your enemy, or there might even be a city state on the border of a place with dangerous beasts that roam in the wild, and it might be just you with a lone blade and your enemy or adversary going together, and you need each other to survive, to simply get there and pour yourself a drink of tea before you even have something to deal with. So there might be a physical component. Of course, the social component is talking, bribing, persuading, using deception, distractions, things of that nature. And of course, you got your third pillar in there, your exploration using the physical environment as well. Also, because these city states are so devoted to knowledge, maybe the safest places to be are in these nation states, wherever they're located. Some could be located in natural formations, such as a string of islands, and there's one island that's has a bay that's well protected from the weather. There could be, it could be that out of the oasis of the world, away from the oases of the world, it could be hideously dangerous out there with just merely walking through the wilderness might bring giant-sized creatures or things that spew out acid. It could be nearly post-apocalyptic in its scope. That's something, maybe the mistakes of the ancestors has spread around, so could be dangerous. And in order to bypass some of these creatures, there may be, much like putting bees to sleep with smoke, maybe it's the gathering of, the nectar of flowers, and the scent of certain flowers keeps certain swarms away, or using a musical instrument that makes a particular sound, like a dog whistle or a flute or something, keep certain enemies at bay. Now, Mr. Spencer says, when I wrote the backstory of the Knowledge Nation, I wanted it to be something big that inspired their hunt for information, old and new. Quote, our ancestors in their hubris made mechanical monstrosities which were too grand to move under their weight. They begged their gods to breathe life into their designs, but the gods' answer they gave spread through the old world like a madness. In fury, they struck down their gods and fed the essence of their maker into their machines. Twisted by their malice, the machines became living avatars of the dead god's wrath. We seek out knowledge that may threaten the gods who remain. Some of us seek the answer the gods never gave our ancestors. A low-key Terminator robot apocalypse. See, I did not know that, but I like where that goes, especially if you have this idea that they struck down their gods. Now, of course, anything in the world where the people talk about, the great masses and striking down the gods and things like that, were any of the PCs really there, or any of the people that are living today, were they really there to see it? Probably not. So we don't know, air quote, what the gods or who the gods were. We just know what the ramifications of that are. So there could be some pretty nefarious people out there that's like, wait, we struck down the gods. I want that power. Like an evil lich or a mummy lord or something. Like, I want the power to strike down the gods. If I can do that, I can strike down these machines because they keep going after me. This is going back to the week we talked about the triangle, right? You have the PCs, you have adversaries that are trying to gain some knowledge, and then you have this third thing where everyone is trying to survive in this Terminator. I'm going to say Skynet, but that's not exactly what you're referring to, but Skynet world. Spencer said, somehow I threw the word never in there. No, you're fine. You're fine. We get it. I like the idea of these machines, and these machines of sorts, these constructs, golems of all shapes and sizes. And you know what? If you're playing something like Dungeons and Dragons, you can reskin the hell out of damn near anything and just call it a construct. You could call, a dragon turtle, reskin a dragon turtle as like a mechanical tank-like thing that just is wandering around performing its old duties, made out of like rusted metal and breathing out its internal engine systems, belching out steam and crushing up the landscape into, randomly and spewing it out its tail end or something like that. You could reskin flying creatures like a manticore. It could be like a drone, like hunter killer that flies around and spits out some kind of it's like some kind of slug thrower, whether you want to describe it as a firearm or it shoots bolts like a crossbow or something, and it flies around with like a weird mechanical eye that looks around corners and things. Like you could do the same thing with gargoyles, harpies, what have you. If you really want to go Terminator as well, you could reskin like doppelgangers or Oni, Ogre Magi. What else shape changes? Silver dragons. You could Rakshasa, like they could be the reskinned versions of what Terminator is, where if you kill them, they're like mechanical constructs on the inside, but on the outside they have skin and flesh, and their skin and flesh could flow or change based on the victims that they kill. And so these different nation states literally need not spies, but like investigative guardians to protect them, to almost like a secret police. My audio's dropping out. Almost like a secret police that are in and of themselves their own faction that patrol the streets looking for enemies within, which would be really kind of cool there, where there's almost a bit of a paranoia inside the nation states as well as externally. I like where we're going with this. All right, so came up with some adversaries for the PCs to fight. Also came up with some missions for them. If, for example, the value of the PCs collecting something in and of itself might be seen as worthless, but its value is it's given value based on who they trade with. So we can go with our real world thing, like spices, like salt was an extremely important commodity. Salt was literally worth its weight in gold, more so. The same thing happened. Same thing happened with tobacco. There are lots of fruits and vegetables and things of that nature. Of course, spices, as I mentioned before. Other resources may be found that are, if you want to go for far more arcane, that might be important for arcane rituals, healing magics, ritualized magics that help spawn other things. Like maybe there's ritualized magic to turn people into sorcerers that a particular city state needs, that kind of thing. Mr. Spenzar continues to say some of the traditions of the nation are used to suss out infiltrators. Exactly. So there may be a faction that's devoted to doing nothing but sussing out infiltrators. If I could relate this to both Ars Magica, the role-playing game, and one of the White Wolf games was based on Mage the Awakening, but it happened during the Renaissance period. Oh, sorry. I normally silence my phone. I apologize for that. Anyway, one of the White Wolf games was based upon the Renaissance period, and it was when faith, technology, and magic all came to a head in a competition with each other. And so there were they were all magi, but coming upon magic in different ways, whether it's through technology such as crafting, alchemy, apothecaries, and herbalism, or whether it was through faith of the self, like Taoism and Buddhism, internal faith, Kalari Payat or shamanism, and then there, devotion to the gods, or a single god, or a pantheon of gods, and then of course there was the magi, magic devoted to some demonology, necromancy, that enchantment, illusion, that kind of thing. But I say that because there were different factions that were devoted to performing different functions, much like we're talking here about cultures and customs and such. So a faction devoted to doing nothing but sussing out infiltrators is important. Thank you, Tesla. Mage the Sorcerer's Crusade. I had a lot. Strangely enough, it's not really talked about in the RPG community, but I had a lot of fun with that and Wraith the Oblivion. Wraith the Oblivion was rather dark, but Mage the Sorcerer's Crusade, we had a ton of fun with that one. Yeah. Like the glasses in the movie, they live. Yeah, there might be some that are their whole purpose is to suss out infiltrators. Now, of course, there's always the good and bad of all these different factions, right? Yeah, you need for good, you need these people to suss out infiltrators. For bad, they're kind of nosy and poking. You don't want them poking around the things that you're doing. You have a nation state that's working on something important. You don't want spies. You want spies elsewhere. You don't want spies looking at yourself because it's the idea that if you go to look for something terrible, you're going to find it. And so, and also, this is also a problem when it comes to espionage. You have these agents that are poking and prodding, looking for infiltrators. Simply being the subject of being looked at as an infiltrator could cast you in a bad light to others, even if they find nothing. Much like being accused of a crime rather than being proven that you committed a crime in our own world, being accused of some of the most heinous crimes we have in our world, ones that are only crimes that are only those that are especially hidden from view, may put someone in a bad light that they can't get out of. And so I can imagine there would be people who will point these investigators at others, these proctors at others, for the simple act of reducing someone else's social status. I heard that Joe and Linda and Ariana down the street, their business, I hear they're hiding. I hear they're hiding the they're doing bad things, and an infiltrator's like, oh, really? You think they're hiding bad things? Let me go investigate. And then others are like, their bakery, they're being investigated. I'm not going to eat there anymore. And in and of itself, that may be a thing where the infiltrators don't want to be part of the politics of the world, but they are invariably pulled into the politics of it no matter what. We see that. Come on, we see that in procedural shows all the time. The detectives need to investigate a crime, but their bosses are like, you need to watch yourself. You need to be careful. These people are important. The detectives are like, I don't give a shit. Like rich, poor, I don't know. I'm going to find the killer. They're like, well, they're important. We better make sure we're right before we pull these people in. It's like, so they're privileged with money, so we need to walk on eggshells. Here's my middle finger. Pelora says not all of the shapeshifters have to be bad by default. Some of them, assuming it's just like a racial type and not converted to them as such, just want to integrate into society and live their lives. Ooh, gets you into some racism themes if you want to go that route. I like that. I like that a lot, where the overriding post-apocalyptic world in and of itself, those victims of that, the creations, might want to live in these society. And intermingle. Or maybe they've been doing this for so long, much like Blade Runner, that the myth of them being dangerous doesn't match with the reality of them all being dangerous. Or maybe they've grown and mutated and become sentient, a la Warforged, Gearforged kinds of things, mechanical entities. What are some other things in Eberron? Racial types, the shifters and the changelings, kind of, and permutations thereof, where they've already integrated in society. But the myth is that they're dangerous. Like you said, the racism thing, people believe one thing, but the evidence proves otherwise, right? People say that they're bad, but but internally they're like, yeah, those people are bad, except for the good ones. You know? Thank you, Dead Man, about Sorcerer Crusade. I super enjoyed Sorcerer's Crusade. I'm going to bring something up about Sorcerer's Crusade as well, and some of the mechanical systems of White Wolf that I, as a personal note, I kind of miss in some game design. Plur says, I suppose you have culture mixes in modern society. A lot of people seem to get very pissed off about clothes, like hijabs, turbans. Yeah, and very much when it comes to culture, there you very much could do a thing where, for example, the ancient masters that created the machines may have wrapped their hands and forearms to protect themselves from getting cuts and bruises and poking themselves with metal and rusty metal and such. So now, brought into today, maybe it's a tradition to use like a mummified type wrapping, like boxers that train themselves, where they wrap their hands and maybe it wraps all the way up their forearms up to their shoulders, and they wrap their arms. And this may be a traditional thing, and others may look at the people that do this as like an affront, like, you're going to honor them? These people brought our world to the brink of destruction. F you if you wrap your arms that way. Whereas as the people who are the inventors and the people who are the designers and the people who feel like they can learn from these ancient masters may do that kind of thing. And so, yeah, people can get pissed off with a simple clothing manner. Now, maybe there are people who actually have scars on their hands, or someone is trying to hide the elaborate tattoos they have on their arms, and maybe a PC is like, I'm just wrapping my arms because I don't want them to see my tattoos, because they're going to think I'm from this particular city state. But one thing leads to another. Mr. Spenzar says, only some of the machines remember their goal. Others have forgotten their purposes and are trying to integrate into society. I like that. I especially like the idea of having enemies that are trying to fulfill their purpose, but the purpose isn't necessarily I kill it and it kills me, right? If there's a machine that was supposed to, let me give you an example. A machine that's supposed to produce materials to build castles, right? Big fortifications for a big, massive war. And this big, let's go with the dragon turtle thing, or purple worm idea, right? It's this big, massive machine that roams the countryside, scooping in natural, it's almost strip mining, right? It sucks in material from one end and produces big, giant chunks of rock out the other end. Perfectly designed bricks, much like Wall-E, and it's not attacking human beings and living things because it wants to kill them. It's attacking them because it's just inadvertently, it's just sucking in materials, chugging it through its system and spitting out a brick out the other end. And there might be mountains and mountains of these bricks all over the place in this massive landscape. But I like the idea of things like not remembering their goals, or kind of beating their heads against the wall to achieve a goal that doesn't exist anymore. I like that, machines trying to cultivate fields where nothing grows in the fields, but it's just still trying to cultivate these fields, even if it means digging a line across a dangerous area where the PCs have to climb up these hills, to climb back down these hills, to climb back up another perfectly parallel hill, as these machines with giant blades on them scour back and forth, planting seeds that they don't seem to have at all. Mr. Spenzar says, or they've begun to resent their purpose after exposure to society, and seek to bolster those societies against their kin, plus racism. Yeah, I could see that too. Could you imagine Oni or Rakshasa or silver dragons or something have integrated in society? And when I say silver dragons, I don't mean the literal sense, but I mean reskinning their abilities, that they are of the same origin styled doppelganger agents that have integrated into society, and they actually love society the way it is. They just wish that people didn't hate them so much. And unfortunately, maybe they don't really know they are uncertain about their own origins. And so they're not even able to even give appropriate answers to confront their own makers even, um, which would draw them. I could imagine them having, there could be a psychological issue in terms of not wanting to, being forced to destroy the very thing, their very origins, but not wanting to do it. It's the enemy that has become an ally, and then they have to fight their own enemies. The half orc that has to kill his own orc kind, or the Klingon or half Klingon that has to join the quote unquote other side to fight against their own people. Plur says in Detroit, being human. You capitalize that, so it must be I heard of a show called Being Human. I didn't know that there was one version called In Detroit, but whatever. I'm going to read it. In Detroit, Being Human, the androids are basically indistinguishable from human. Oh, the game. Yes. Okay. They're servants and so on, but they have a light on the side of their head which tells them apart from meatbags. If your infiltrators are just stewards, they could have to wear clothes like bracelets, perhaps, which denote them as something other than human. And it could be a law that says maybe you are unable to, or you must identify yourself as being something that is not human. I did not know it was the PS game. Yeah, and Tesla Ranger doubles down on that. Yeah, Detroit Being Human. I know the television show Being Human, BBS show, BBC. I'm sorry, BBC show. Whatever the case might be. In the TV series Humans, all the androids have green eyes, and so there might be something. And of course, let's gamify this a little bit, right? So, for example, when it comes to, for gaming purposes, most extraordinary abilities are not hidden unless someone has the trait or specifically enacts their special abilities in a subtle way, right? Thank you very much there with the Detroit Being Human, the PS game, the PS game. So in this sense, the shapeshifters in this world, or maybe the PCs must all play a shapeshifter. That would be kind of different as well. But in this world, there is something that always identifies them, like the green eyes, a glow on the side of their head, maybe a certain skin tone is common amongst them all. That skin tone does not necessarily need to be a real world skin tone. It could be blue or purple, yellow or bone white or something. There could be maybe the number of fingers they have, or the shape of their ears, or what have you, right? It might even be something like Westworld, where they look like pasty white. Their natural form is pasty white without any eyes or mouth, to denote that they have specific facial features. Yep. Mrs. Spensar says their teeth are just a single solid strip of white colored metal. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so there might be something common amongst all of them, unless they specifically act to cover what it is that they're doing. Much like, for example, in Dungeons and Dragons, most magic is seen and knows that it is being performed unless the spellcaster has the ability to cast subtle magic. So therefore, maybe a certain type of color or scent or strangeness in the air or glow or denotion of some kind of trait is cast upon physical objects or victims or themselves when that type of magic or power is used. So an enchanter that tries to use their powers to affect someone's mind, maybe that individual's eyes turn milky white, or glowing orbs flow around their head as they perform their magic, or the person performing that magic, breaks out in flop sweat with their eyes rolling in the back of their head when they perform their magic or something, whatever the case might be. So this might be a recognizable thing, and much like Blade Runner, maybe there is something that the investigators can do to elicit this response. Much like in Blade Runner, if you ask a series of non sequitur questions, it elicits a reaction from them that shows that they are an android. There might be questions, or burning a particular type of material, or a reflection in a mirror, or something of that nature, that spraying them with a certain kind of chemical, any number of things that denotes them as, hey, we know what you are. Deadman says, Pillar-ist says, that's a pretty cool one. I like that, the idea of a solid strip of metal. Like it's mimicking humanity, but they haven't quite gotten it down right. So the teeth, they don't actually grow regular teeth. It's just a strip. Eyeballs, fingernails might not be quite designed. Like they might actually literally be completely square strips of material or something. Deadman says, starting with S3, most of the androids and humans had blue eyes, while the green-eyed androids were declared dangerous and quarantined. Mrs. Spencer says, everyone smiles as a greeting, easiest way to see. Yeah, especially if they don't smile, or they always smile. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So, all right, so getting back to, I'm going to pivot back harder into cultures and customs and traditions. Maybe they instinctually, or through something, they always engage in some kind of tradition or custom from the ancient ones that created this post-apocalyptic world, and maybe they don't have a choice in doing so, or the non-sentient ones don't have a choice in performing it, but the sentient independent ones do. And Blur's like, damn it, I'm an android. That's kind of a cool story idea for the players for a player to realize, like, wait a minute, what? I'm one of the androids. When did that happen? I didn't realize that. The PCs keep gaining levels, and once they obtain the ability to alter self or polymorph or something like that, you end up finding out that they really are an android, but up until that point they weren't, or they didn't realize it, or they hadn't achieved some kind of apotheosis into that form or something. That'd be kind of cool. I'm liking this. Maybe some of the traditions, this is kind of a weird thing to say, maybe this is a cycle for humanity happening over hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years, where it is the culmination of society being infiltrated and taken over by these machines, only for it to collapse or rebirth itself to happen yet again. And this is just one cycle in something that's happened over and over again, and neither side realizes it. That would be kind of an interesting thing as well. Yeah, kind of cool. So much like the thumbnails that I picked leading up to today, like I used dream catchers and henna tattooed hands, and the thumbnail of being, I don't know what the tradition is, but the being blasted and splayed with colored powders on the flesh and skin and all that kind of stuff. Hey, Pelora, have a great one. I will see. We're always here. Always love to have you. Thank you very much. See you later. Have a great one. Bye. We are actually coming to the. Hear my voice. Okay, we're actually coming to the end anyway. But yeah, having these cultures, maybe the one of the hidden purposes of these mechanical beings was to protect and uncover some of the lost knowledge and culture of the lost societies that were supplanted in the first place, and to bring them back. And that could be a really great reason to adventure, to uncover lost civilizations and bring those civilizations back into the fold. Dead Man Finds Humans, the TV series. Yeah, I think I saw the first season of that. Pretty cool. A little. I loved it because it tickled my futurism and transhumanist fancy. It could have rubbed some people the wrong way, and it makes. I love the idea because it shows us humanity sometimes in its darkest forms, when people are inadvertently doing very simple non-moral or ethical things in their own mind, but to the outside world you're like, that's kind of sick, you know. um the dad trying to disable the sexual block on their robot at home, um, when no one's looking, is kind of a weird thing, right? Because it's really just a machine, much like a vacuum cleaner, except it looks human and walks around and walks and talks. But here he is trying to have obtain a relationship with it because it looks beautiful, and he's entranced with its eyes and its shape, but really it's just its body, right? And is it just basically a blow up doll, or is it a human being? And does it matter it's a blow up doll? Because in his own mind he thinks of it as a human being. It's those kind of things that I love. And in this world of knowledge, that may be the thing that is antithesis to how this world wants to hold on to its knowledge. And what, myth or not, this might be the thing that they feel that the infiltrators need to prevent people from doing, from losing themselves, from the humans against the born against the built, or whatever the case might be. So I'm loving it. I'm loving it a lot. So anyway, guys, I thank you very much. I feel like I've exhausted this line of thought a little bit. Normally we end up going up our sine wave of great ideas normally goes quite high at the very end. For some reason, I'm just losing it a little bit. I'd have to sleep on it, but yeah, this whole channel is kind of devoted to world building anyway. Tomorrow, of course, is Third Pillar Thursday. We get to talk about my favorite, as your self-appointed third pillarist. We get to talk about the environment and exploration and my subgenre, my niche of making things interesting by using unique locations as a way to tell a story. That third portion of the PCs and their adversaries and where they do it. Mrs. Pensar says, we can brainstorm the next day's content right when this episode ends. Kind of. Not too heavily, because I like to do it live, save it. I don't want to blow my proverbial load between shows. But yes, we'll definitely talk. I find that some of us in the RPG community fear losing our ideas, as if we're going to run out of them. And I found that it tends to be the opposite, that we often have more ideas than we can, shake a stick at. So yeah, if somebody really wanted to, I suppose if you had an inclination, you could probably go through every episode, or at least every week, and probably design a world and a setting and game material from every single one of them. But I also realize that most people are like me. They're pretty much sedentary and lazy, and no one's going to really do that. And hell, if I really wanted to, it could go back and just mine that information, if we wanted to. So anyway, guys, I thank thee for participating. Some of you, no, most of you that are here on a daily basis. I can't thank you more. I'm going to talk a little bit in the Discord. I brought this up to Tesla as well. So guys, thank you very much for just giving me the energy to do this on a daily basis. I think I might even produce more content since that's all I can give you towards a particular goal. But those of you out there, spend your time with me. Your time is very valuable. You don't need to be here. You don't need to hang out with me. So I really appreciate that. You don't even need to interact with me, honestly, but you do. So I really appreciate it. So thank you very much. I got to give a shout out to Joseph Keenan and many of the others that even drop in their comments. I read every single one of them for the videos, even though I know you're unable to participate live. Azala, rest of you guys there, thank you very much. So your time is valuable. I hope I can give you some change back after spending your valuable time with me. Have a great one. See you guys. See you tomorrow.